Xcel did what, frankly, a rational corporation would do and said, hey, we can't have that kind of shareholder risk going forward. What can we do to mitigate that? And the quick and easy answer is you just shut the power off before wind happens. You take it off the table. Yeah, people will be angry that the power's not off, but at least we're not starting a fire and at least we're not in a lawsuit. Well, why don't they just bury the power lines? In my neighborhood, we bury the distribution lines. Why doesn't Xcel just do that everywhere? Instead, all of the attention in those proceedings where something like that would happen is Xcel, go ahead and build a new transmission line here. Xcel, go and build a new wind installation out there because we have climate goals that we have to hit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of PowerGab, your go-to show for all things energy and environmental policy here in the state of Colorado. I'm Jake Fogleman, joined as always by my co-host Amy Cooke. This is our first episode back after the holiday break. We hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year. Now you're back to hear more nerdy energy policy. That's my favorite part of doing this job.
We have a guest.
We do, yes.
We'll tell you more about it, but
yeah, it is hard to miss on the set now.
Yeah, the super quiet predator.
Right. But like you said, more on that at the end of the show. To kick things off for us this week, we just want to briefly touch on what has been one of the bigger stories in energy policy that actually happened right around the new year. And that is, of course, at the very last minute, the Trump administration stepping in to issue an emergency order to keep the Craig Coal Unit 1 online. It was scheduled to completely go offline at the end of the year. And I think it was the 30th that they came in and issued that order.
Yeah, it was almost at the midnight hour.
That's right. Yeah. So we woke up, New Year's Eve day to some big energy news and obviously tons of reactions, ton to get into. But we wanted to do a pretty thorough job with this. And we have a great guest lined up who knows this plant intimately, used to actually work there. And we're hoping to get him on probably in the next week's taping. But we will be sure to let you know when that happens. And you won't want to miss it because obviously big news story here in Colorado, yet another coal plant that won't be going offline.
Right. Keeping coal, actually coal keeps the lights on.
That's right.
So we're learning that again.
Absolutely. The other brief story we want to touch on is another thing that happened over the holiday break, but actually some good news out of Denver courts for once. I know you and I have watched for many years a lot of rulings that we have despised coming out of Denver court, but not this one, where a Joe Biden appointed federal judge in the U.S. District Court for Denver issued a preliminary injunction against the state of Colorado's gas stove warning label law on First Amendment compelled speech grounds. So a reasonably good ruling for once on just an insane nanny state policy that came out of the Colorado legislature.
Yeah, no, it was totally nuts. It was if you guys just to refresh your memories, and I think did you write about this? You must have. I think you've written about it, but they required. It came out of the state of Colorado that there had to be a warning label that went on gas appliances, saying it is bad for your health. So they were forcing manufacturers to put warning labels on gas appliances because people just don't know that your gas stove is causing death and mayhem. But if you put that warning label on, somehow, some way, you're going to have full knowledge. Well, it's compelled speech against your own product.
Right.
And I give a lot of credit to the judge who just didn't buy it. And as you said, it's a Biden-appointed judge, but he didn't buy it. He said, nope, it's compelled speech. Preliminary injunction has been granted. And I think it's been granted indefinitely, at least until it makes its way through the court. Yep,
until the case plays out, this law will not go into effect. Just a little more detail on just how insane this law is. It imposed up to $20,000 in fines. What it reminded me of is a law that actually didn't make it out but was equally insane was the one where they tried to put the warning labels on gas pumps. I don't know if you remember from last session.
That's right.
That one, for whatever reason, didn't make it out, thank God, but this one did. And the other piece of Judge Cruz's ruling that I appreciated, not only just the ultimate ruling, but on the grounds, he said, this is compelled speech because the claims that the state is trying to make about these health effects are by no means settled science. This is a little bit in the weeds for folks, but for us that are in this, fight every single day, I remember just like a year or two ago, suddenly there was just a wave of research coming out from environmental groups all of a sudden saying, actually, forget the climate angle of natural gas stoves. Actually, we think it's the biggest cause of asthma, and we have all these research reports that out of nowhere, people have been using gas stoves for generations. Out of nowhere, suddenly this is the scourge of public health. So this was an entirely orchestrated push. It's an entirely orchestrated movement to find a new angle to attack something that really they don't want for climate reasons, but they're using a public health veneer to get rid of.
And it came from Rocky Mountain Institute.
Yes.
Colorado's own Rocky Mountain Institute was where this, I think the first report came out of there. And to your point, it was all of a sudden you saw it everywhere.
That's right.
So it was a very coordinated attack on natural gas appliances to get rid of under the auspices of public health. Oh, mothers, you don't want to put your child in danger of asthma. Actually, one of the biggest shorteners of life and threat to public health you see in third world countries when they have to cook indoors with dung or wood,
Right.
and it's inside and no way to properly ventilate. They would welcome a natural gas appliance.
That's absolutely right. And one last thing to ding Colorado on with this bill, I just have to do a little bit of a victory dance on the grave of this bill, at least for now.
Yeah, spike the football. Go, Jake.
Is that this was such an insane policy that this couldn't even, like I said, this was an orchestrated movement. It wasn't just in Colorado, but it was so insane that even Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a similar bill in California. It didn't even make it out of the legislature in Massachusetts. It failed in Illinois, and I think one other deeply progressive state it failed. Only Colorado had the wisdom to pass this, and Jared Polis, who claims to be libertarian-leaning, signed this into law. And now, they're dealing with the ramifications because the Biden-appointed judge said, yeah, you just violated the First Amendment. Good luck. Try again next time. So.
Yeah, the idea that we are this pro-business, business-friendly state, that's a myth.
Yeah.
And our governor, as a libertarian, I'm going to say that's a myth as well.
Yeah, certainly when it comes to environmental things. But beyond just the court ruling and the Craig news, one of the other big things that happened over the holiday and in December was another round of what they call public safety power shutoffs. This affected, I think it was over 100,000 people in Colorado, if you know the numbers.
Yeah, it was over 100,000 eventually lost or did not have power, whether it was from intentional shutoff or power line.
Or from the wind, yeah. And for some folks that lasted for 4 days, 5 days. I mean, this was serious stuff that people were going without power. And, every time something like this happens, we did an episode, I think the first time Xcel did public safety power shutoffs about a year and a half ago. But anytime something like this happens, for understandable reasons, people are upset, they're up in arms. In a rich society like Colorado and in the United States, we're just not accustomed to not having power and not being able to turn the lights on and power our lives. So we thought we ought to dig into, it's a little bit of a complicated issue, but one that really needs, I think, some clarity as to what happened, who's responsible, and why we may see this in the future unless policy changes.
Yeah, we're going to see it in the future, which is why Predator, super quiet. We have a way, we'll tell you at the end of the show how you might be able to win that. So you're going to want to stick around. But yeah, this is it's a complicated issue. It's a complex issue. If it were on social media and it said relationship, it would be complicated. That's what it'd say. I want to start off with something before we dig into why, because this has been the general reaction from politicos, from the general public, from a whole host of people who I get, they just accept if you flip the light switch, your light's going to come on.
Right.
And when it doesn't, they want to know why, but they're also looking for a simple, easy answer as to why. And it's not easy and it's not simple.
That's right.
But this was an op-ed that was in the Denver Post, and it's from Juliana Venenziani, sorry. Anyway, it was an op-ed in the Denver Post, and it says, the title is Xcel's Power Shutdown in Boulder County was unacceptable. Now, I just want to lay a little political groundwork on this real quick. Remember a while ago, Boulder was trying desperately to start their own municipal.
That's right.
So I actually don't know, and this, the author of this, Juliana, she actually brings up a point about the Boulder County infrastructure. And I think that's probably fair because I'm not certain how much time or how much Xcel invested into Boulder when they thought that they were going to lose it to a municipal.
Yeah.
So did they upgrade their infrastructure? That's a great question, and certainly worth asking, and Xcel should answer it. But she writes this, a couple of things. I've spoken with long-term residents, some of whom have lived here for 60 or 70 years, who say they have never experienced a power outage of this scale or duration. Because as you pointed out, it went on, I think it was almost 4 days for some. I will say I have experienced a 4-day, well, maybe 3.5-day outage during a massive snowstorm, and actually had to borrow a generator from someone because I wasn't smart enough to have my own at that point. But she goes, there are reoccurrence of these shutoffs, and this was, as you mentioned, it was a public safety power shutoff. That was the initial thing. They shut, it's called PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff. And they do that in weather events. And this is a new phenomenon.
Yep.
So you're right to wonder, has this, why are we doing this? We are normalizing blackouts. We are making the abnormal normal. So I said that she went on to say, and I've just got a couple more lines I want to share. Their reoccurrence underscores the need for an electrical system capable of operating safely under predictable environmental conditions. And let's face it, wind is predictable here.
Absolutely.
And it's been happening. And rather than one that requires prolonged, widespread power shutoffs. And then she goes on to say, repeated or prolonged power shutoffs threaten Boulder's real estate values and long-term population stability. Reliable utilities are a foundational expectation for homeowners, renters, and businesses. And if outages of this nature become normalized, she used it, Boulder risks becoming a less attractive place to live, work, and invest. And I'm going to say that is going to be all of Colorado.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this forever, but let's get to why this happens. And I will start with, and I want you to keep in mind while we're talking about this, Wyoming. Wyoming had far worse winds than we did.
That's right.
And in fact, there were places in Wyoming where they were hurt. I think they had one that was 140 mile an hour, but it was right outside of Grand Teton. But they had much stronger winds than we did. There were power outages that also came back quickly. A friend of mine up in Torrington told me about theirs, but that came back on quickly. They did not have preemptive shutoffs. So think about that. Wyoming did not. Worse wind. They did not have preemptive shutoffs. We did. What's the difference? Well, you could say, okay, sparse population. That's true. But in Colorado, we use these public safety power shutoffs as they're really liability mitigators.
Yep.
This is not about they say it under the auspices of public safety, but it is a liability risk mitigator. Xcel just agreed to a $640 million settlement. They're trying to avoid another 9-figure settlement. So you're gonna see these because one, we've invested money in wind and solar instead of in hardening the grid.
That's right.
And homeowners and others dislike it when they come in and they clear cut to stay away from power lines. They don't like that. So you have these urban wildlife corridor. Actually, it's called a wildfire urban
interface, maybe?
Yeah, interface. That's it. So that's right. So if you're going to allow vegetation right up to that point, you're going to have shutdowns to limit liability. That's just good. That's part of it. Plus, we have not hardened our grid to be reliable. We have put environmental factors well ahead of reliability. So to Juliana, you're going to see way more of these because we don't talk about trade-offs in Colorado.
Yep.
Wyoming does. We do not.
That's an excellent point, because there's plenty to say there. It's not just Boulder, to your point about that op-ed. It's anywhere that Xcel has service territory, because, like I said, sort of the acute factor behind this was the aftermath of the Marshall Fire. Xcel caught a bunch of crap that its distribution lines played a role in that. I think there were some other potential sources of the fire as well, but like you said, it ended up in a massive lawsuit, $640 million settlement. So Xcel did what, frankly, a rational corporation would do, and said, hey, we can't have that kind of shareholder risk going forward. What can we do to mitigate that? And the quick and easy answer is you just shut the power off before wind happens. You take it off the table. Yeah, people will be angry that the power's not off, but at least we're not starting a fire, and at least we're not in a lawsuit, right? But to your point, there's also the policy trade-off, because I saw plenty of commentary from concerned citizens and folks online and elsewhere saying, well, why don't they just bury the power lines? In my neighborhood, we bury the distribution lines. Why doesn't Xcel just do that everywhere? I mean, that's a fine thing to raise. People have to understand that that's very expensive. That's a costly thing to do. Utilities can do that. But to your point about trade-offs, that would have to come through a proceeding, maybe a piece of legislation, something that ratepayers can be involved in, to be eyes wide open that, hey, you're gonna see your bills go up, but you can avoid these public safety power shutoffs. Instead, all of the attention in those proceedings where something like that would happen is Xcel, go ahead and build a new transmission line here. Xcel, go and build a new wind installation out there, because we have climate goals that we have to hit. And, it's a big corporation. I get it. Xcel has a lot of money and a lot of staff. It can do a lot of different things, but there's only so many things it can do at once. And if all the energy and attention, especially by people that write the laws down there at the Capitol, is telling it to invest in new capital expenditures, which, oh, by the way, happens to align with its own personal incentives, because that's where it profits, don't be surprised when there's not a whole lot of extra other attention played to, basic maintenance, or even doing some of the less sexy things like burying power lines that would also cost money. Because at the end of the day, even if people now said, Xcel, we'd like you to bury the power lines to avoid these going forward, we've already spent so much money on these other green projects. Our bills have already gone up so much. I don't think people would tolerate the cost that would entail.
There's no way they would.
Yeah.
So, and to Xcel's credit, they've invested something like over $1 billion in infrastructure upgrades. We have an infrastructure that we have wooden poles that are, 40 years old, probably,
decades.
maybe older than that. There are a lot of things we could do to harden, especially the distribution system. That's the single most important thing. And that's what comes to our houses, right?
Right.
So those are the lines to our houses. And that could be by burying, but I have to, my house was built in 1960. I live in an old neighborhood. Those lines are overhead.
Yeah.
And you know what? They come along and they cut trees so that those trees they don't fall on those lines. I mean, that's what you have to do. But homeowners object to that. But the problem that we face right now, and we have the very real issue of reliability, but then we also have the very real issue that we have a state that has prioritized something other than reliability. They've prioritized emissions, and and that's where all of the financial investment goes. And we've already seen, just during Governor Polis's tenure, electricity rates in the state have gone up. I think it's over 3 times faster than inflation.
Yeah.
And listen, we all know what inflation has done. Well, electricity rates have gone up 3 times faster. It's not as if Xcel just came in and asked for rates that said, hey, jack them up 3 times. They are responding to what the legislature tells them they must prioritize. And what they haven't prioritized is hardening the distribution system. And right now, when rates have already gone up 3 times faster than the rate of inflation, I think that's a really hard sell, which is why we have the super quiet predator.
That's exactly right. And that's why we harp on this stuff all the time, right? Because to a certain, we're critical of a lot of rate increases that get, asked for down at the PUC, but to a certain extent, some of them are absolutely required. You need to maintain the nuts and bolts of your electric grid or your gas system or what have you. Sometimes investments are important for organic, load growth or what have you, or building out to support new homes that are being built or new businesses that need service. All that's well and good. All of that supports the state growing, the economy growing. That's great. But we harp on this stuff because every single time that those things get approved and new rates go up, you're taking slack away for other needed, projects, in this case, grid hardening or what have you. If everything is geared towards expansion at all costs in order to meet aspirational policy goals, suddenly there's no slack in the system. The ratepayers have no patience for the real nuts and bolts of maintaining the grid and making sure that things like public safety power shutoffs don't become a norm. And before you jump in, I just want to say that it's not just Colorado. You see this pattern kind of repeating in other states that are similarly situated to Colorado, like California, for instance. PG&E, I think, is the utility out there that got dinged for similar wildfire reasons. I think one of the Hawaii utilities as well, because of that big wildfire that they had on Maui. Similar thing, all of the political incentives were telling them to invest to meet climate goals. And what do you know? You let your existing grid get fragile and wildfires happen. So we're seeing a pattern. It seems to all be concentrated in these states where utilities are acting on the political incentives that the lawmakers have set out for them. And in this case, that is to meet climate goals over the basic safety of maintaining the grid.
And the other thing is, the political incentives are there and they're followed by financial incentives.
Yes.
So Xcel, the way it makes, money, the way it profits is by building up its asset base, and operations and maintenance doesn't increase the asset base.
Right.
Building a new transmission line or building a new solar or wind installation or a new gas plant, for that matter, anything that that is a tangible asset they can hold on to, that increases their asset base and they get a rate of return on that asset base. Operation and maintenance doesn't bring you an increase in that asset base. Yep. It is boring, it's tedious, it's hard, it's whatever. But more importantly, Xcel there's no incentive, they don't get incentivized to do it. So this is what brings us to something else too that I think is interesting. They actually tried to fix this in the Wildfire Matters Review Committee, which is one of these interim committees.
Yep.
And they tried to fix this liability issue so that you weren't always just shutting off the power because you fear a 6 or a 9-figure settlement. Well, they couldn't come to an agreement, so there was a bill there that just didn't make it out of committee. And their hope is the committee and stakeholders, meaning utilities, insurance providers, and others, can come to some kind of agreement on the liability issue. It still doesn't fix how a utility like Xcel is incentivized, and it also doesn't fix the other policy problem, which is at the same time that we're shutting off power because our grid can't handle high winds anymore, and then power goes down for 4 days. At the same time that all of that is happening, we are demanding more of that very same grid.
Yep.
It can't handle this load.
That's right.
And we're demanding more of it because of public policy, the policy that the state legislature is prioritizing, which is this electrification mandate, this forced electrification, where you're going to be forced out of your natural gas appliance, warnings, labels or not, you're going to be forced out of it. And think about this, you're going to be forced to abandon an infrastructure that's buried underground.
That's right.
And you're going to put it in power lines above ground at the same time that we can't handle. So none of this makes sense. I get it. And it's complicated, but this is where we are. Yeah,
that is a phenomenal point. And just before we wrap up, I do want to, piggyback off that just a touch, because this public safety power shutoff just so happened coincidentally to come, I think, just a week or so after the PUC issued the Clean Heat Plan decision, where it set the new targets. And so it was top of mind for everyone that state policy was directing them to get off of the gas system and onto the electric system. And then sure enough, the electric system goes down and people are without power. And I do know for a fact, I know a couple people that were affected by the PSPS who, didn't have their lights on, couldn't keep most appliances running. Even if that gas heating, a lot of times they have an electric blower, so that even that is vulnerable. But I do know that they were still able to cook and provide meals for their families because they had gas stoves that didn't rely on the electric grid. And what a reminder that is of the benefits of having a diverse portfolio of resources, something as robust as the gas system to help you. Electricity is important, yes, too, but something like gas was still humming along during that high wind, and many people were still able to cook meals for their families because of it. So I just want to leave that out there for folks as they're considering the fragility of the grid and the trajectory we're on, because to your point at the top of this segment, I think we're going to continue seeing this going down the road.
Yeah.
I don't see any sobering up, at least in the near future, for sure.
Yeah, I don't. I think you're right. They're not going to get a dose of energy realism. And I will say, when we lost power for 3.5 days, and it was cold. I mean, it was a snowstorm. It was one of these freak late October snowstorms. It was cold. It was heavy winds, or it was windy, but it was also heavy, wet snow. Pulled power line down, and there were a whole bunch of lines that had to be put back. And by the way, I tip my hat to those linemen.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing, and they get out there in all weather. But it was in my house, we had hot water, and we had 2 natural gas fireplaces that we used for warmth. So we were able to remain in the house. We didn't have lights at night. Obviously, we had, our lanterns, and we had flashlights and things like that. But what we didn't have, we had some heat, and we did it through natural gas, buried infrastructure. And what we're doing is totally nuts. But we should probably give folks a little bit. So Predator, super quiet. This is your inverter generator. This is what we're giving away. And here's all you have to do. Each week, beginning with the first show of the new year, we are going to pick a comment, the most clever, pithy, funny. If you mock us, we'll say, if you're mean, we're going to, probably, since it's our show, we get to pick who we want. So if you're mean, we'll probably toss you. But clever, pithy, funny comment. In the show, go to PowerGab.org. It takes you to the YouTube channel where all of the shows are housed. You leave a comment, we'll pick one, and we'll share it with everybody. So in the next show, we'll share the comment that we thought was best from the first week of January. And we're going to do this through the end of the legislative session. So we're going to talk about all of the things that the legislature is doing.
Yep.
And you'll get to comment, and we'll pick one comment each week. And then at the end of it, we're going to narrow it down, and we're going to actually let you vote on what your favorite comment was. And that lucky person, is going to get a Predator super quiet inverter generator. Runs 12 hours. I think it's just a gallon of gas, and keep a couple of gallons around, and you'll have it. When the next time this happens,
that's right,
you won't be out of power.
That's right. So start sending those comments in, folks. Quickly, do you have any takeaways for our listeners on any of these segments?
Yeah, if number one, if Colorado's energy policy and what sort of elected officials say don't make sense to you, we get it. We suffer with you too. Yeah. So there's a contradiction there. That's number one. Number two, I think I'm going to say that Jake is right. I don't see this getting better anytime soon. I am not optimistic about the short-term future of Colorado energy policy, although I am hopeful. Because I do think that the clean heat decision, the fact that natural gas is buried underground, my hope is that we do sober up.
Right.
But before we're all forced off of our natural gas. So I'm not optimistic about the near-term future, but hopeful about the long-term future. And then 3, get yourself a generator, because this is going to happen again.
Yep. Send comments in, because you just might get this one.
That's right. And comment on, that's right, on every show, you have a better chance. Just be funny, clever, pithy, whatever.
That's right. You just might have a chance to firm your own grid. But that does it for us on another episode here of PowerGab. If folks like what they saw, they can head over to PowerGab.org to check out our entire back catalog. We produce new episodes every single week. We're also available wherever you get your audio-only shows, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to reach out to us to suggest future show topics or guests you'd like to see us interview here on the program, you can send that our way at info@powergab.org. We always love hearing from you guys. But until next week, we'll see you.